Okay, so yesterday marked 1 year um, of doing these YouTube videos on non-duality, and I thought, hey, maybe it's time to introduce myself. So I'm just going to kind of try to be relatively quick about um, everything that brought me to this place, um, just kind of the biographical stuff and the spiritual stuff. So I was born in Tulsa, grew up here for 6 years. My parents divorced. I moved to a medium-sized town called Tahlequah for a year, and then a small town called Stigler with 2,500 people. Um, and of course, I stuck out like a sore thumb. And and I remember things like, I don't know, randomly speaking with a French accent all day for no reason, or when New Kids on the Block was really popular and everyone sort of picked a new kid and had their poster and stuff. I was looking around like, was there a memo I was supposed to get? Like, is this how does everybody else know this is what you're supposed to do? Like, I have no interest in this whatsoever. Um, so even when I was like, 8 or 9 years old, it was like, what is going on here? Um, and, there are things like, I grew up watching John Wayne movies and watching the movie Dances with Wolves, which actually humanized Native Americans. It was the first movie I ever saw that did that. Um, I remember thinking like, yeah, of course they're really human. Of course, like, why would they be different? Um, so even though I didn't really know any non-white people, um, there was this kind of longing to like see everyone, meet everyone. I was like the opposite of xenophobic as a kid. It was like I almost sort of idealized kind of non-white people. Um, and once when I was about 13 or so, I looked up at a just flawless blue sky, and there was an inkling. It was like, there's more to this than they're telling me. Like, not the crusty, you know, organized religion thing. Like, there's something, because I mean, that never resonated with me. It was always something like, yeah, I should be a good Christian, I guess. But it never really struck me, right? But looking at this blue sky when I was 13, it struck me. It was like, I wrote a poem called To Touch the Blue, and the last line was, astronauts, they just break through, but surely I could touch the blue. Like there was some connection to reality that the scientists weren't getting. Um, yeah, and then about a year later, I met some atheists, started reading Carl Sagan, lost my religion, which was um, which is a really big deal. What it felt like was the floor dropped out from under me and the ceiling fell away and the whole house, like a little cozy 70s, like shag carpet, brown walls kind of house that I'd been living in, it was gone and I was like floating in outer space. Didn't know what was up or down, didn't know what was right or wrong. It was like, holy shit. And I was thinking like, am I gonna become an idol worshiping, like adulterous, covetous murderer? Um, because what's gonna stop me, right? Uh, but I did not. Maybe not any more than, I mean, like, yeah, humans are flawed. I'm going to put it that way. So I'm flawed too. Um, but not any more than before. Um, and then things would happen like when I was 16, I got my scuba diving license after waiting for it patiently for many years. It was just like, it was my dream. I did it in Arkansas. And, but then when it came time to like, get a diving flag license plate for my car. Like that was part of the dream, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to be a scuba diver. I'm going to be cool. but it was like I couldn't bring myself to like put the thing on my car because it was like I don't know, there was something about like identifying as the thing wasn't the point, and I knew that somehow. It just felt off. Um, anyway, I was kind of in high school in Stigler, I was kind of a big fish in a small pond. Um, and I learned about a high school, a boarding school that was free actually in Oklahoma City, a science and math high school. If you get accepted, it's free. And so I applied for that and got in and I did really well. And, to my shock, I was accepted to study at Stanford, which my parents weren't thrilled about because it was expensive and far away. But, I got some federal help and scholarships and we made it work. Um, and I was going to study engineering because, like, that's what you do when you're good at science and math. It makes money. Um, but looking at the courses I'd have to take and just the packed schedule of it and how little else I would have a chance to explore, made me feel really trapped and unhappy. Um, and I wasn't that interested, to be honest. Like I don't care about making cell phones or designing, you know, um, whatever. Because it's probably going to be electrical engineering. Um, I mean, I know there's more to it than that, but but yeah, it was like I don't actually care about that, but it's what you do, right? Um, and then in the summer of '99, when I was 19, I happened to get a job doing with a bunch of hippies, basically, um, going door to door with CalPERG, um, you know, finding members for the National Parks Conservation Association. And I smoked pot for the first time and did mushrooms for the first time. And the mushroom trip was wild. It was like, um, I don't know if I took 9 grams or something. It was like, so it was a lot. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. And completely out of my mind, out of the timeline, actually. Uh, there was like a guide who was like showing me the all of time and space laid out before me. And all I could think was like, holy shit, I don't know how to get back on the timeline. I'm trapped here forever. Um, and then like, you know, sometime later, I guess, I was trapped in a squishy room, which was like pink and squishy. And I realized after a while, like, this is my own brain. I'm trapped in my own brain, right? So how are you gonna get out of that one? You know? Um, anyway, a little foreshadowing. Time isn't real. You're trapped in your mind, right? Um, so yeah, I after that summer, I just sort of gave up the engineering idea. I just couldn't sign up for a bunch of classes I didn't want to take. So I decided to study physics. It was kind of a compromise. It's like it's interesting. I'm good at it. It's somewhat respectable, and it didn't have a lot of requirements. So I could explore a lot of different things, which I did. And I also got a minor in political science because political science runs our lives. I mean, politics runs our lives, and I wanted to understand it, not just be totally, a blind victim to it. And that's a whole other rant, but yeah, I won't go into that. Um, but there were things like, there were all these like traditions that Stanford had, and they really beat us over the head with them to the point that it was like kind of, I don't know, like silly. Like, oh, I'm a Stanford student now, so I have to do these traditions. Um, and then later I read Hermann Hesse's book Demian and his kind of critique of like everyone finds their little tribe and their traditions, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it was validating in a way that I thought it was pretty dumb to. I mean, if a tradition comes organically and people want to do it, then great. But like, beating everyone over the head with it and identifying with it. I thought it was pretty silly. So, um, yeah, and also that year I wrote another poem about am I mad? Do I want to be? They tell me to be quiet, but I feel, perceive, and love and hate. And try as I might, I can't deny it. That was the last line. It was just like this feeling that there's some, the fire terrifies, the cold slowly kills. Like it's like if I keep repressing myself, the fire's going to go out. And if I stop repressing myself, something's going to explode. It was kind of like that was this intuition I had. But whatever, you're a silly college kid, you're writing your silly poetry, your emo, whatever. It's like, you just kind of dismiss yourself, gaslight yourself because serious people, do X, Y, Z, right? Um, oh, and then I took my favorite class that I took was improv for theater, which um, I realized was kind of a practicum in Taoism because it's like you're on stage and you have to accept whatever comes your way and build on it, as opposed to like if you kind of everyone's blocking each other and saying, "Oh no, not that. Let's do this," or "But this should be different," then it's a disaster. But if it's like, "Yes, and this, oh, I see," and it's like you accept all the offers and you just keep. It's just this beautiful flow that goes God knows where because it's not directed by anyone. It's I mean, yeah, it's a practicum in non-duality in a way because everything in our conditioning is to say like, oh no, no thanks, no. Oh, this should be different. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, that's not what I thought. So it's very counterintuitive to be on stage and it looks like a magic trick because it's just so countercultural to accept everything and keep building on it. But yeah, it had a big impact on what came next, which was, I graduated, um, and most of my peers were going to, Wall Street or, you know, get a PhD or a master's or whatever. And I didn't want to be in school anymore. I didn't want to be in an office. I didn't want to be dealing with rich people's finances. Just no interest whatsoever. But it was like, what do I do then? I felt like I was on a featureless plane with just just no idea how to even begin to understand what to do next. So I spent about a month in my childhood room staring at the ceiling, hating myself until, my parents were kind of like, So I was like, all right, fine. So I went back to California because I had friends there. I liked it. I knew I had places I could stay pretty much for free. And just got like a manual labor job at a environmental laboratory, very simple stuff. Um, and otherwise, just read books and sort of wrote in my journal and tried to figure out what the hell to do. And I was hit by a massive wave of insomnia, where it wasn't just like, oh, I could only sleep 3 hours a night. I could not sleep at all for a month. Like I would literally lay there every single night for 8 hours, just wondering how much it would cost to pay somebody to hit me over the head with a baseball bat, and just knock me out. Um, it was miserable. And finally, after about a month, there was like a vision flashed in my mind. And then it was like I could sleep again. And so I was like, well, what the hell was that vision? And it was kind of like a little clay figure, like humanoid, very basic humanoid clay figure. And over it was this ghostly golden suit of armor. And I didn't really get it. But then later I was reading some Carl Jung, and I came across the quote, "He who looks without dreams, he who looks within awakes." And it was like, oh, yeah, the ghostly suit of armor, that's like looking outside for affirmation, like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? Well, what's the next thing, right? The clay figure was more like, what's actually here? Who's that? What do I actually want to do? What do I actually might fit me? Um, it's like I never even asked myself that because it's just like one thing after another, like this is what you do next, this is what you do next, whatever. Just sort of, maximize your money and prestige, and that's life. Um, but then it was like I don't actually care about money or prestige. Especially like studying in the political science department, everybody was a careerist and morality did not matter. It wasn't on the radar. It was all about career. And physics to a large extent was pretty disappointing too, as far as like if I asked a professor something he didn't know, most of them would get angry, instead of like, oh, let's explore that. It's like, well, that's not relevant. Um, like for example, I asked at least a couple of professors and then I stopped you know, because this was the reception I got, but I was like, I've always wondered like what is mathematics inherent to the universe or is that something that humans made up? And they would be like, why would you ask that? That doesn't matter. Um, and then we got the quantum mechanics and in my little brain, it's like, oh, now we're going to talk about like, the what indeterminacy says about free will and all these kind of things that I find so fascinating. Nope. This is how you solve Schrodinger's equation in an infinite square well. This is how it's just like pages and pages of calculations with very little, very non-intuitive. You know what I mean? It was like, it wasn't pretty. Like Maxwell's equations are pretty. They're beautiful. All this Schrodinger stuff, like just sort of, turning into 10-page equations full of differential equations you just had to memorize. It was just like, this is not it. I'm not interested in this. I don't care anymore. Um, so, yeah. Um, so, what did I want to do? Well, I had studied abroad in Moscow for a semester, and I loved it. I loved learning languages. I loved speaking a foreign language. I loved traveling on trains. I loved, you know, eating, pickles and blini that I buy at the train station from babushkas. Um, I love just the culture and yeah, um, the metro, the subway. And I had started writing because I didn't want to get home and just be like my parents be like, "Hey, how was Russia?" And it's like, "Oh, it's great." Okay. So I started writing emails like every week of what the different adventures I was having. And I loved writing about these adventures. And so yeah, I was thinking like I want to go back to Russia actually. That was really fun. I want to learn more Russian. No reason, like there was no goal other than just like I enjoy learning and speaking Russian. So I got a Russian textbook, started studying more. I found out about a program the next summer that I could teach at a summer camp in Siberia. I thought Siberia in the summer, that's going to be a trip. Um, and, I needed more money than I was making at the lab. So I figured out I got a job as a bartender, which is a lot more money and a lot more fun. So, and I was staying somewhere for free. I was eating for very little money. I didn't have insurance, didn't have a car, didn't have a, you know, cell phone, whatever, like almost no expenses. So all my money went straight to the bank. So, and then I started taking a martial arts class, jujitsu, met a Lebanese guy, we started dating. And then I started studying Arabic as well because the script, it was just like, how was that an alphabet? And once I had some context of people I knew speaking and writing the script, it didn't seem like so foreign anymore. It seemed like local, like something comprehensible, something that's like, oh, I know people who speak this. And of course 9/11 had just happened, and the government appeared to be spouting a bunch of xenophobic lies, but I didn't know anything at all about the subject, so I felt helpless to counter it. So I thought, well, studying Arabic, that's a start, right? Um, so then eventually I decided after Russia, I had enough money to travel to do the thing in Russia and then travel somewhere afterwards for about 4 months. And a friend in France was like, "Hey, why don't we meet in Egypt?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, okay, why not?" And then I got a guidebook that was like from Istanbul to Cairo on a shoestring, and as I was reading it, I was like, "Whoa, that's like sounds really cool." Because you just think about the Middle East as you know a big war zone full of caves and crazy people. And when I was reading through the guidebook, I was like, "Dude, there's some awesome stuff here, and it's like totally cheap, and people are super friendly, and like, yeah, let's do it." Um, so that's what I did. I went to Egypt, went to Jordan, was planning to skip Israel, Palestine, but I ended up going there because people from both sides had invited me there. I was like, all right, fine. That's kind of the accepting offers thing, from improv. It was kind of like, let's go to Egypt. Okay. Let's go to Palestine. Okay. It's kind of like that. Um, oh, by the way, I ended up teaching at a summer camp on the Black Sea, not in Siberia. Not that anyone cares, but not far from Sochi. That's a whole adventure in itself. But yeah, so I ended up in Palestine, became totally intrigued and entranced, and after I ended up staying a lot longer than I expected, and then I went through Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, went home, made some more money again, came back to Palestine, lived there for a year and a half, um, and yeah, I mean that there was a part of me at that time that wanted to just like go to a monastery or something. I'd always been intrigued by that, but there was something in me that was like, you're not ready to sit in the closet, kid. Like, you need to see more of the world before you can, contemplate your navel. And I also I didn't know how to pick a place. Like, and I didn't want to end up wasting my time. Like, what if I pick some tradition that turned out to be a total dead end, right? But it was on my mind. And actually, an experience I had just before I went to Palestine for the first time when I was in the Wadi Rum desert of Jordan. Um, I It was a full moon with the big kind of giant ring around the full moon because of ice crystals in the upper atmosphere, and it was gorgeous. And I was on a tour with some nice people, and we'd had sort of roasted chicken and um, tomatoes and onions under the moonlight, and somebody was playing the lute, and the moon inched higher and higher toward the zenith. And when it was midnight, I was like, I wandered off to take it in solitude. And I just looked up, and it was like the stars were like a chandelier. They were like three-dimensional. It was like they weren't just it wasn't just like a flat black canvas with pinpricks in it. It was like there was somehow three-dimensional and subtly colored. And the sky was this sort of just silvery black in that moonlight. And I just looked back, and there was like an infinite crescendo, and instinctively I surrendered to it completely. And it was like I expanded to fill the known universe, It was like this body was like a little speck of interstellar dust somewhere. I hadn't, it didn't matter where. Um, it was like all scales, like, the mountaintop, the molecules, the stars, like it was all, um, I don't know how to describe it. It was all perfectly unified and perfectly, I don't know, it was like everything at all scales was such crystalline perfection. And the feeling wasn't a feeling. It was, human feelings are like this, actually. Human drama, like this. Um, whatever this was, it was like a human body is like a little thimble held under Niagara Falls. That's what it feels like. It's like I was just battered, senseless by the staggering perfection of this universe. And it was just funny how much wonder and perfection there is compared to what a human can even begin to experience or understand. And like, I mean, even bliss was like this compared to, yeah, I, I clearly was not human for however long that was. And then my Bedouin guide like ambled over and like started hitting on me, and it was just kind of like the most rude awakening of just like being stuffed like a sausage back into a human body. And it was like I there was some kind of trailing threads of wisdom still, to where like I couldn't get mad at the guy. I knew, it was I just politely was like, oh, I'm a little bit tired. I think I'm gonna go to bed. But inside it was like, dude, you stole the entire universe from me. And the idea that pretty soon I knew I would kind of like recongeal fully as human and have to worry about things like money and cars and hotels and all that kind of stuff. It was so devastating. Um, and something in me knew that like it was a fluke. Like I wasn't going to be able to call that up at will. And probably I wouldn't have any chance to either understand it or much less repeat it for many years, maybe decades. Um, but after that, I was no longer afraid of death, because if death is anything like that, yeah, nothing to be afraid of at all. And it's clear nothing is lost, because from this perspective, human concerns, human cares, human drama, it's just minuscule. It's just, and it's not cruel or forgetful. It's just matter of fact. It's just like, the way we think about the little single-celled organisms in pond scum. I mean, it's just like, we don't hate them, we're not cruel to them, but it's kind of like, yeah, they're gonna live out their little single-celled dramas, and it just, but this perspective was way bigger compared to humans, as humans are compared to pond scum. Um, which is again not to denigrate us or pond scum. It's just how it happens, apparently. But it was a relief to realize that all this just really doesn't matter that much. It's like we have a chance to experience all kinds of things, including we have a chance to be valiant, we have a chance to be courageous, we have a chance to rest after a long day, we have a chance to harvest olives, we have a chance to, it's like it's a really nice world. It's only our nonsense that causes problems. We could kind of take what we get and enjoy it, but we want more, 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 more than that guy, even though that guy's me too. Um, yeah, it's so clear and it's so painful to see that so clearly, and yet to watch everyone kill themselves and each other anyway. But hey, I'm not in charge here. Um, yeah, so after all those adventures, I worked in DC for a while at a think tank, a Defense Department think tank, trying to bring what I had learned in the Middle East into the halls of power. The halls of power were not interested. There's no career advancement and, no funding for treating or even thinking of Arabs and Muslims as human beings. It's just not, just doesn't matter. I can write it. I drafted part of a book about that, but I won't go into it. But I mean the sniveling bootlicking, even at a supposedly nonpartisan collegiate think tank, they followed the winds of conventional wisdom, which meant lobbying money, basically. It's very sad. So I was extremely depressed. I went back to Palestine to kind of get my mental health back a little bit because Palestinians are like the friendliest people you'll ever meet, the most welcoming. Like it's like a soft landing everywhere you go. Um, and it really, I spent some of the happiest years of my life there, and it was really, really refreshing and wonderful to get back in that atmosphere. Um, and when I got there, I kind of realized what I had to do, which is I need to write a book about my experiences and try to educate Americans about Palestine. If the government doesn't care, maybe the citizens will care. So I did that. I spent, a year and a half at home writing that book. Moved to New York to find a publisher. Published it. Spent, did about 100 book events all around the world. Even went to, showed up in person to the Daily Show with Jon Stewart and gave him a copy of my book. Uh, Never got a guest spot. But I really, really, really tried with every fiber of my being for a long time to get that book out as well as I could, and it just didn't really break out. Didn't sell, you know, nearly as well as I'd hoped. There's probably maybe 15,000 copies in circulation. Um, Not even enough to earn out my advance. So yeah, I was feeling kind of down about that. But in the meantime, I had met my husband, or my future husband, and then we got married, and we started trying to have kids, and just failing. Um, so it was 4 painful years of fertility struggles and losses. Um, and then finally, had my son in 2018, and then my daughter in 2020. And then the pandemic hit, and then my husband started working 2 jobs from home, uh, two computer jobs, programming jobs from home. So he was sort of like 16 hours a day of working from home to kind of get out from under the fertility struggles debt and all that. And we wanted to buy a house. Um, so all of that was really, really hectic. And then house hunting was really, really hectic. And then it's kind of like we finally got the house. The kids were finally 2 and 4 years old. Things were finally, and my husband finally got onto one job. And it was kind of like I could exhale for the first time in so long. And I was 42. And I started getting really weirdly reactive. Um, like I would just lose my mind over stupid things. And I felt like something in my body was like on fire, kind of spiritually, and I know it wasn't an illness per se, but something was wrong. And then I kind of realized like, oh, I'm 42. Like, I mean, of course it's the answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything, and the Hitchhiker's Guide. And I always kind of thought, oh, by age 42, I'll have things kind of figured out. I'll be kind of an adult, you know? Um, and I didn't feel like that at all. And I thought back to that moment on the dune in Wadi Rum all those years ago, and I was like, there's a big mismatch between how I feel and what I know is possible. And so I told my husband, I'm like, look, I don't exactly know what's going on. Um, all I know is I feel called to some kind of spiritual path, and I have no idea what it's going to look like or what it's going to entail. Um, but that's where I'm at. And he said, well, I'll support you however I can. Let me know. He's a good man. And so, and my dad had died and left me some money. So I used that to go to Peru, uh, Temple of the Way of Light, for an ayahuasca retreat. And I also did a Vipassana retreat. And, both were impactful in different ways. The Vipassana retreat was the first time in my life I had a really strong emotional reaction, and I had nowhere to put it. I couldn't go complain. I couldn't go post. I couldn't go yell. I couldn't drink, or whatever. And I don't drink very much, but, it wasn't even available if I wanted it. I couldn't smoke a joint, nothing. And I just had to sit with so many difficult emotions. And it was kind of a breakthrough. It's like I learned to feel into my body for the first time instead of just like skip over it. Um, yeah, I've talked about the ayahuasca retreat in other videos. I'll leave that for now. Um, oh, and also, I had read Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, and he suggested like just don't dislike stuff, right? And so I did a kind of an exercise. I went to one of my soccer games, and I have a tendency to like, if a team is a lot better than us, I get so mad because it's like, why are you so skilled? Why did you get to play soccer in college? Why are you bigger than me? Why are you faster than me? It's like it's very silly, but it's like I just get angry at being kind of shown up by somebody who's a lot better than me. And especially if they like cheat a little bit or, kind of throw their weight around a little bit in a way that like escapes the rules. Boy, I get mad about that. Um, or just if they run in some kind of like, some kind of like little self-contained, look at me, I'm a sports star kind of way. Like, so I'm like, well, why don't I just try not doing that? Why don't I just try loving every woman out here? And so I tried that, just like, nope, not gonna hate that. Not gonna be mad about that. Not gonna, um, you know, take that personally. And by the end of the game, my heart was actually burning like what it felt like was there's a pressure cooker full of some kind of molten God knows what, and somebody had released the steam valve just a little bit. So it was like the steam was kind of pouring out of this little hole in my heart. Um, and for 4 days, I just tried to feel it. And then I was kind of like, all right, I need to distract from this. This is too much. And so I did that. But it was like clear that there was so much somehow trapped in my system that needed to come out. Um, and that was actually before I had the talk with my husband. That, um, yeah. So maybe that was the first time. But it was kind of, I didn't exactly do it on, I mean, there wasn't an emotion attached. It was just a sensation. I guess the emotion was like, don't hate things. Um, yeah. But, oh, the other thing is at the Vipassana retreat, I asked, you get a little Q&A session with um, the leader every now and then, and I asked, like, what happens when you get to the end of your samskaras? And he just laughed and said, oh, that can go on for centuries. And I was like, that doesn't sound quite right. Um, like, yeah, I didn't buy that kind of, twiddle your thumbs for your entire lifetime and let somebody else deal with it. I was like, I want to figure it out now. Um, and then I found Mr. Angelo DeLulo's channel, Simply Always Awake. And that was the first time I ever found a spiritual community that felt, realistic, not anti-scientific, no red flags, no proselytizing, no like, oh, you have to do this, this is the best. It's just like take it or leave it. Um, and it was the first spiritual place I ever felt remotely at home. Um, and yeah, you've through these videos witnessed a lot of that process. Um, so I'll leave that there for now. That kind of gets me up to the non-dual stuff, and I'll maybe talk about all that stuff later. Um, but yeah, it's been a great year, a lot of processing. I made almost 200 videos. I've got almost 200 subscribers, and it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for hanging in there. And yeah, see you next video.